Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson, and today's guest is Jacob Cooper, and he is a buddy of mine. I call him my little buddy. We met at a near-death experience conference, and we clicked right away, and been friends ever since on Facebook. And it's so funny because we're so different. He's young man, I'm old lady. He's New York, I'm Long Bottom, Ohio. I'm a hick. He's a city slicker. Hi, Jake.
It's like reminds me of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, just from two totally different places, but it works, the city slicker and the hick from French Lick, as they called, Larry. So yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me on. An honor, a big
And
honor. Very proud of your work.
Our Facebooks is just like comical. Like we're constantly cracking jokes. We're so sarcastic.
I think a lot of the issue is there's a set prototype for what spiritual needs to be, but to me, the closest explanation of spiritual is just being your baddest self in your own way. And I find laughter as a great gateway to really opening up your true essence and really amplifying your energy. I think a lot of people get very dense and serious with this practice, and your frequency, is too heavy at that point. I think laughter is really important to really ascend your own true nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything we can't say to each other. I mean, we're just so blunt.
It's like an older sister, younger bro thing, and we go at each other and stuff. But at the end of the day, I know you mentioned there's a lot of differences, but we're about a growing percentage, but maybe 5 to 10% of the population who've had these experiences. That number is obviously growing with advancements in science and medicine. So, as much as we have differences, you know, um, just on the checklist, there's a major unificational part, and I think that's why we really click big time.
And we both had child NDEs. You were 3, I was 5.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah. It's very different. I mean, diametrically, it's very different than what you normally see. I mean, a lot of near-death experiencers in the media, you'll find they're middle age, they're having like corporate jobs or they're in the medical field, totally not into this stuff, and then this happens and it totally floors them. But for us, it's much different. This is all that we knew. We weren't as conditioned or as programmed. So, that does come with a double-edged sword. I almost kind of see this world as like Benjamin Buttons and Brad Pitt, where there's a reverse age processing. And I think near-death experiencers understand just how big of an illusion the chronological age of the body versus the inner being of the soul is. And the NDE awakens children to that awareness big time.
yeah. And we met at that conference. We both went the night before we were supposed to talk on the
Oh
same
my God.
NDE panel. And we were both doing the same thing. We were going to check out the stage, to see what it felt like on the stage. And it helped me get rid of my
Yeah.
cold feet a little bit. I mean, still really scared. Like when the next day when we were doing our talk and you went to hand me the microphone, I almost bolted. I almost
Yeah.
bolted to the bathroom, like
I, I
sprinting.
would have I would have put my arm out. I would have held you down. We would have had Jim over there. We that needed to be said.
You would
We
have
had,
tackled me.
I don't know if I have that in my arsenal, but I mean I would have tried to do that. But thank God, you were able to read your poems, and ever since then there's been a large trajectory in your work, and I've been following it and having what you have today. No surprises, very obviously very proud, but not surprised. And I do think when you have anxiety, there's a big part of you that has a big care for what you're doing. And it's clear that there's a passion, and our anxieties matched itself because we really had a big care, and it was a clear calling as to what we're doing. And we felt that degree of pressure to perform from that deep inner calling that we've kind of bogged down for quite some time. And so I viewed it as a lot of excitement and energy behind the nervousness.
Yeah. You ready to get started? You gonna tell your NDE? Everybody's waiting.
Yeah, it's great that you're having, different NDEs from different standpoints. And getting getting adults who have had childhood near-death experiences is so important, because I've got a feeling, you and I are not alone. There are others. Even one guy who endorsed my book, Dr. Bernie Siegel, New York Times bestseller, had his at 4 or 5 years old. They're out there, and the more that we tell, the more I think confidence that others will be able to come out. Much like for me, Betty 80 was the one, and I know Betty, who gave me the confidence as well as the diagnosis of what a near-death experience was. So from hearing her account, there was universality. But for me, it was September of 1993. It was right before the Jewish high holiday of Yom Kippur, which is a day of atonement, a day of, the holiest day calendar in the Jewish New Year, in which your soul is preparing itself to meet the Creator for a day of abundance and manifestation for the new year. Little did I know I was about to meet the Creator, but it wasn't the Creator of my own religion or my own synagogue. It was the inner God that I was about to, connect to. But I went to a playground, with family, friends, and I just, it was just like a regular day, but something, felt a little bit different about that moment. And going up on a ladder, I began notice that my breathing became a lot more resuscitated. And at the time, I had a highly contagious and fatal upper respiratory condition known as whooping cough, which otherwise known as pertussis, which for infants, children, and in some cases in adults could be fatal. And so as a child, I had whooping cough. It wasn't treated. And so there's a lot of parallels with my book coming out in the last year or two with what I experienced, and, on a macro basis, what people were going through. But I lost, all of my breath when I was on, the top of this slide. Everything began to shut down, just as if you go to a power breaker in a basement and shut, one, power unit off at a time. My body was not working. And as a result of my body not working, it was pointless for me to be in it. It would be like trying to be in a car and the car engine, wasn't working. And so for me, I got out of my car and I looked at my engine, and I was able to have an immense amount more awareness that I think any medical doctor would have had, never mind a 3-year-old, at the time, just in terms of awareness of the body and its different functional components. And I think it's true that we use a very small percentage of our brain and in our brain to just, navigate life. And I experienced that. And the last part that I was privy to or aware of was my own brain, which was, deprived of oxygen as a result of suffocation. And my brain literally snapped in half. And I felt as if you take a plug in a wall and just yank it out as hard as you could. That's what happened to my brain. And then once my brain literally cracked in half, that's when God came in, as a statement goes. And I had a lot of the stereotypical experiences of a near-death experience that, Dr. Raymond Moody outlines. And, his, work, one of those was the tunnel-like sensation and encountering light beings,
You had the
vibrational.
tunnel sensation?
I had the tunnel sensations. It's actually very rare. I think that's more common in people out in the Western, cultures to describe
Did you
that.
go up, sideways? What did you do?
The best way I could describe it was an infinite upward trajectory of euphoria and endless sensation, as if, the feeling that I was experiencing was kind of like going to Six Flags and going on the fastest, roller coaster with the utmost torque that you could possibly have, and speed and force. And that's what I felt like. So it's just like this endless journey upwards and upwards. And I could feel, the best way I could describe this was vibrations that I was going upwards. And then moments I was able to really go into the utmost highest, vibrational frequency, and the climax of all reality as we know it. And it just, to me, the center point of all that ever is and ever was. And the best way I could describe that in our vernacular is God. And I had this, connection with God. And to me, that connection was this beautiful golden palace and this beautiful light. And it was so powerful that I had to shield my own light, my own eyes from looking at it. And it just, everything in our world was so different from, looking at this. The colors, the sounds, the sights was so diametrically different. But the best way I could describe this was an endless euphoria with no possible beginning, middle, or end. And, in our lifetime, that's so different. We're used to like hitting a cap on how good we could possibly feel in our lives. But, accessing the spirit realm, there was no, it was open-ended, climactical, energetic force that I was experiencing. And then moments later, I was be able to have like this, I would say this bronze kind of gold-like sensation in this energy field that I was accessing, and this frequency that I could best describe as Christ consciousness. It wasn't that Jesus was standing in front of me in tassels or whatever. It was more of an energetic expression of divinity, or an octave of the divine that I was accessing. And in these moments, I was quite comforted, because still a part of me was beyond 3-year-old Jake. I was in the totality of my soul, which is beyond the personality and the ego of 3-year-old Jake. And accessing, Christ consciousness, it put me in a state of awareness where there was no time, and there was an understanding that of all was well, all will always be well, and all was always well
What did you
in this
see?
energetic force. To me, it was just more of this bronze kind of gold-like color. So it wasn't that I was seeing Jesus directly in front of me. It was deeper, of more of like an expression of the divine. And I think for all of us, we take on sometimes, forms within physical bodies, or different, personalities, but beyond that is an octave or an expression of divinity.
So did you
And
see
so,
Jesus?
no, I didn't see
Oh,
Jesus. To me, it was much deeper, where I was able to feel and sense, the totality, of Christ consciousness that I was experiencing. And bear in mind, I grew up in a house that, you know, that never taught anything about this. Certainly, Jesus was, Jewish at the time and in his life, and was a Reform rabbi, I guess you could say. But I grew up in an Orthodox home where, I wouldn't say it was shunned, but it certainly wasn't something at the forefront of my education, of my lifetime. Then moments later, I became aware of my own two spiritual guides, that were to the right side and left side of me, and they were a male and female entity. And at the time, I knew their names, and their beauty was just beyond any descriptive word. And I felt a great deal of embarrassment, for forgetting who they were. And there's just a part of me that just had a recollection that they were with me this entire time. And I just forgot that their presence was always with me and around me. And in seeing my own spirit guides, it felt like a grand reunion. And I felt, just so heightened in being able to unify with them.
hold
And it
on, you're
felt,
snoring. My husband's snoring right here beside me.
am I that boring, Jim?
I keep throwing stuff at him, wake him up.
My guides ought to wake him up too. But in seeing my own spirit guides, it felt like the most innermost part of who I was at its innermost core. It just almost felt like, me, and just looking at the innermost, most intimate part of myself and my own spirit guides. And it was just a beautiful reunion with my spirit guides, knowing that they never left me, but I lost sight of them, on a moment to moment basis. And, my guides were able to literally maneuver my body down the slide, and then moments later, my body was on the ground, and the people that I went to the park with were calling my name. And I, the suffocation that I had of whooping cough didn't stop there. It was a continual period of suffocation, which, I wanted to grab them and hold them and tell them that I was okay. I was aware of my own spirit form. My body was, lying there lifeless, and I wanted to tell them that I was okay, but I was aware that I could see them, but they couldn't see me. And that was incredibly, suffocating, and just kind of torturous that, I was able to see them, they couldn't see me, and I just wanted to shake them. And I can understand how, those who cross over feel when they look at their loved ones, I'm sure in deep grief and sorrow, where they're there right with them. But at times when, at our own levels, we have, limited awareness at times. I almost look at it like a radio dial of frequency, where you have to amplify your own energy to access the spirit realm, and to really have interdimensional awareness and communication, with spirits beyond the physical. But in those moments, I became aware of all is spiritual. It's not monopolization, by one, teacher, one leader, or a group. And I was able to look at the own electromagnetic fields of the people around me and their own spirit guides, and I had a lot more awareness of so many more things about them that I was privy to. And then moments later, I was greeted by an endless sea of angels. And these angels were childlike angels, and they were kind of like a gold kind of color. And in looking at these angels, like a bronze kind of gold color, the same frequency that I, connected to in this Christ consciousness. And in looking at them, I had a form that I was aware of where my meat suit or the body was on the ground, but my form was outside of it. And I was able to look at the angels, and where the angels were more concerned about me, or my spirit guides rather were concerned about me, the angels were just more macro focused. They had no, uniformal identity. They were just, it almost kind of seemed like a god minions of, of these kind of like servants of the light, and they were just there to serve. They had no like they had no degree of like wanting everything, anything. All they were there was just to serve. There was like a pure unconditional degree of service of the light. And I just almost had to pinch myself because they were just endless, and they were right overlaying this reality. They were right here. It was just like a dial, like slightly above this frequency, and it was just like this overlaying filter, right here. And I just almost had to pinch myself upon seeing them, So at that moments later became aware of my own soul family, which was, different people that I carnated in different lifetimes, that was a part of, my inner core, my inner being. And I think at a human level and on a deeper spiritual level, there's only one soul family, soul group. But I think, specifically we carnate throughout different lifetimes with a different, with the same group, just we play different roles. And to me, it's like a different ray of God or different expression of God that you and this team kind of have. It's just like a different prism of God. And, people play different roles, but it's contractual, I think you and that team. And, in moments later, I became aware of a question as if I would stay on the angelic realm on the other side, or continue my life as 3-year-old Jake. And I posed a question, if I do stay, what would this life, be? And then moments later, I was given a life review of a perspective of, others for not only this lifetime, but, many other lifetimes that I lived. And I became aware of the most relevant lifetime, a lifetime in which I took my own life, which was, to this day, it's evidentially, read by a lot of different intuitives who haven't heard my near-death experience, and they've pointed this out prior to me ever going public. So everything that I saw and experienced, they were able to see without me even opening up my mouth. But I was able to become aware of many different students that I taught in that lifetime, and I became very emotional, and I became aware of the moment in which my back hit the wall and when I committed suicide, as well as the feeling of returning back to unconditional love, and there was no judgment. But I understood a lot of my dharma, which is your life's work, within this lifetime, related from my near-death experience to that last lifetime, which was, in a sense, to no matter what you're going through, every the force inside of you and the power inside of you is infinitely greater than anything that you're faced with. And that's something that I forgot in moments of deprivation of life's force. And I think I had to go through this on a personal level to really hammer that message of the infinite power of love inside of us that could override any temporary turbulence that we undergo, and to allow people to truly remember their own power and what's inside of them and all around them. And moments later, I was able to become aware of different pockets and different groups that I was, presenting in front of. And one of those I'm sure was with you, my friend, my comrade. And I said, as beautiful as the other side is, this unique window of integrating the hereafter into the here now is infinitely greater than the other side. And I said, heaven can wait. And I turned down heaven because this ability to turn down heaven, to turn down the hereafter and to bring it to the here now was incredibly beautiful, because it was something that I knew within time, that people didn't have to wait till they die to see the light, that through these different encounters, through people who have had these, traumatic, turbulent periods of near-death experiences, that we're here in many ways as sacrificial souls to allow people to remember who they truly are, what they're forever connect to, and to be empowered in that realization. And in that moment, I said, I will stay. And then all the angelic forces and celestial beings and light from the other side, left. And I was left with like a moment of doubt, like, what the heck did I just do? I just turned down heaven to come back to this hellhole. And you know, and moments later, my guides comforted me in my own doubt. And they said, you know, the power of your own thoughts, because I think each of us have our own blueprints to a degree that is you know, that is programmed and you know, cultivated before we come into this lifetime, and it's a divine design, you know, before we get here. But if we have our thoughts and our negativity and our worries that override our true nature, you know, then we'll be offset from the blueprint, and we'll be out of the groove of our soul. And so they told me the power of thoughts and its correlationship with being able to be in flow readiness for the life that I was destined to live. And in that moment, I woke up in a hospital bed, and my mother was very distraught, you know, in the room. And, you know, later she told me that I had so much anger in me days later that I literally kicked the doctor who was trying to operate me. And I credit that to a lot of trauma. But
Why
to
did you
me,
need operated on?
well, I not operate on, but I was
Oh,
that was in the doctor that was operating on me. I didn't get an operation, but months later I was on you know, nebulizers, I was on inhalers due to the whooping cough and a lot of the scarring that happened as a result of the cough. And you know, I was recovering from this cough. You know, it took me, you know, a period of time, but you know, there was scarring from all the coughing. And you know, doctors to this day are able to see, you know, a lot of the damage as a result of whooping cough. But you know, I think for me, it was a lot of trauma, you know, that happened, as well as such a diametric, you know, change of realities from being, you know, on the other side in this place of eternal love to coming back to a cold hospital bed, you know. And you know, my mother was there, and it was very frustrating to me where that same sensation that I had with the people around me looking at me at my meat suit as in my body, you know, occurred to me with my mother looking at me, where I knew that she was looking at the surface of who I was, and it wasn't anything on her, but I just was awakened to, you know, that my body or my chronological age was just an illusion of who I truly was. And I was just very frustrated that I didn't have the vernacular to be able to describe what I experienced to her. And so to me, that deprivation of oxygen or that suffocation lasted around 15 to 20 years, in which I really kept this experience sacred to myself, which is, you know, actually a common, you know, trajectory for a lot of child near-death experiencers, because it does take around, you know, 20 to 30 years to integrate and to make sense of. But to me, this was such a sacred, holy experience that I didn't feel it was worthy of telling anyone. It was something that I kept to myself for a period of time. It wasn't until I read Betty's book that I became aware that other people had this. I thought I was the only one. And to me, it was a little bit of a double-edged sword, where I felt like I was so special, and all of a sudden I was taken off of this cloud where it's like, okay, other people have this, but also gave me universality, that this was something that other people had, in a recollection that this experience wasn't something to hold on to, but rather I was to let go of it. And, you know, it wasn't a book to collect dust on a shelf, but rather a book literally and metaphorically that was there for others, you know, to make sense in their own lives, and to have a story, you know, in their own lives. So, you know, that's some of the short, I know in Life After Breath, I go into a little bit more detail, you know, some of the themes. But yeah, that's some of the, you know, short experience that I had through my NDE, you know, in September of 1993.
sorry, my cat was pulling on my cord on my laptop and the thing's going.
It's all good. What's funny is, I don't know why, but I'm a, you know this, the listeners don't know this. Like, I'm a dog guy, but for some reason cats just throw me off. I don't know why. It could be like a past life thing where I was in ancient Egypt and I was like killed by like cats. I don't know what it is, but like they just throw me off.
He
It's
bugs the
interesting.
crap out of me when I'm doing this.
It's dogs will be able to like intuitively know, like when you have that, I don't want to say the word, but like screw off button, where cats, if you throw that out there, they'll come to you that much more. It's like, you know, they'll just know the buttons that you tell them not to push, and they intentionally do it. It's, you know, it's interesting, you know, but yeah,
You said
but
something a while ago, made me think of how we are, I don't know the words you use, but the words I use, like we are our whole self there.
Mm,
And when we're back, we feel like just a part of ourself.
mm,
Like we're
mm,
not that whole. Like, where everything's so vivid and so different and new, and we're in our consciousness
mm.
fully. And then when we're back, like even as a child, it's just different
Right.
because the memory is so vivid. Now, did you ever forget yours, or did it come back later? You never forgot.
I always held on to it on some level. Sometimes it would come to me stronger, and other times I wouldn't think about it for a while, but it was always there in the background to some degree. But for me, I guess to survive, I almost kind of needed to just push this away, because as a child going through this, brain trauma, I had this, sliver of light that would go through my brain, or I view it as a filter of two worlds, because once my brain shut down, that's when I was able to go to the other side. And so, in preschool, I would have, all these experiences and crossing over, and I felt a lot more comfortable in that realm than this realm. But it wasn't until a moment in which I was having interdimensional spirit communication. And when I looked at, a classmate of mine, and they looked at me like I was just from another planet. And so for myself, I just knew that these were things that, the rest of the world, did not see or forgot. And
Were
the
you
world that I was
leaving your
brought up in,
body, like in preschool, or?
in moments of solitude, I was able to readily cross over to the other side. But it's, almost like to a point where I wasn't allowed, after a certain amount of attempts. And it was just almost kind of like I was here, part of me knew that I was here to be here, as a spiritual being in this human body. Otherwise, what would be the point of being here in this body if I was over there more so than here? And so, for me, there was this period of incubation where I was between, both worlds very readily. But I think in order for me to fit in this, left brain, society that valued information over creativity and imagination, in order for me to survive with the speed and the torque of the society, I needed to push that away in order for me to meet what was this kind of like conveyor belt in front of me. But in order for me to thrive, I needed to make sense of it, and that happened, later in life. Being able to integrate it and have it a part of my life, and to make sense of it, and to have meaning and understanding of it, in my own life. But I would say to your point, mm, you know, the frustrating part is when we come to this world, we're disempowered. We're physically reliant on adults. And so that translates to, them being put on this hill of all knowingness. And so we get disempowered in our own backyard because we're not taught that we have the answers. We're taught that reality and the outside has the answers, and we need to, in order for us to be something, we need to do something, and we need to know things. We're never taught that we're good just as we are. We're taught that if you get that A, then you're good. So there's a causality and effect with our value and our worth, that most of us are programmed in this unconditional world. And so, that's very different than the spirit realm, where you don't have to do anything to be anything. You already are all that you're seeking. You have all that inside of you. That spark of divine, infinite intelligence is innately who we are.
Did those continue, those spiritual experiences throughout? Or?
I would say so. It wasn't as profound on a regular basis of the near-death experience, but I had a great deal of premonitions. As a kid, I would see things on a macro or micro basis that would just unfold in front of me. And some of that are highlighted in Life After Breath. But as a kid, it was just so annoying. Like I wouldn't go around calling it psychic energy. It was just kind of like this annoying premonitions that would keep on happening, that I just wish that I could just live a life and not see these things. And then moments later, they would happen to me. It just felt like this annoying deja vu, weird sensation. And I just got like really sick of it. I just wanted to just, not see these things and just live a life. And so I kind of, buried a lot of the, psychic phenomenon that happened to me very frequently as a kid that I kept very privately. But, I think I would say in Life After Breath, I highlight, just this, experience of an out of body experience that lasted for several weeks, in which is just this kind of shell of consciousness that I was living just was shed, and I opened myself up to this whole new, consciousness. And in that moment, I just became aware of this infinite degree of energetic forces inside of me that I forgot. And it was just, you call it chakras, you call it, um, inner being, but I had all these sensations that people probably don't have if they're on like, DMT or ayahuasca or stuff like that. And this happened to me naturally. So it wasn't like a Timothy Leary, kind of trip, I was on any hallucinogenic, but I had this, profound out of body experience that lasted, several weeks. And the most profound experience was that this happened, September, almost, 15 to 20 years later from my NDE. And I was in a synagogue right around the high holiday in which I literally left my body, and I was able to become aware of my own spirit totem, this bird that I was following. And then looking down on the congregants, I became aware of this one uniformal energy that connected each congregant. But I saw the egocentric thoughts and separation that people had, of this forgetfulness of this one strand of energy. And for me, that was so profound because I saw, all these, statements, and they almost became like a hallmark new age, kind of statement, like we are one. And for me, it just was so exhausting hearing that. But to actually see it evidentially in front of me took this, annoying kind of new age overstatement to a clear knowing, that was in front of me, that indeed we are one. And to see that right in front of
Yeah, I
me.
don't get that. I hear
Right,
the spiritual people say that. I don't get it. I don't feel like we are one. I
right,
just,
right. Yeah, it's funny. I don't think we're living that, but I think if you squeeze us out in all our degrees of separation, we are in, I do believe we are that. It's like Wayne Dyer would say, you take an orange and you squeeze an orange out, you get orange juice. And I think you take us out, you squeeze our essence out, it's just made of the one same fiber. It just comes out different personalities and in different ways. But at our core, I do believe, there's a uniformity to a degree. But we, present ourselves differently. We have different forms of evolution and different forms of awareness. But at our core, the creator is in the created, so in our DNA. So yeah.
and one of the NDE researchers I had on a while back, I come up with the term like we're in a can. That's what it feels like our body, like some people say meat
A
suit or
meat
whatever.
suit. Yeah.
It feels like we're in a can, like we're contained in this thing. And then when we leave, it's like getting out. And so I don't feel that like we are one stuff. I just don't. I've always been a loner. And then I guess you call it empath, where I pick up on everybody's emotions. And then I have to like go get alone to find myself again. It's like, because I get lost out there in everybody. Like I'm picking up all
Right.
their emotions, and I'm picking up their emotions. Quite like you as a social worker. Like if you have this issue to deal with and their issue and then their problems, and you're like, where am I at? Like I've taken on all this stuff. Where am I?
Yeah, I do believe our true nature isn't rooted um, in our story, but finding ways to define our story. And I know Deepak Chopra would talk about the difference of karma versus dharma. Karma is like, people who are just constantly talking about their story or what happened to them. And dharma is really our true essence, our true nature, our true purpose. And we're able to really find meaning in our lives. We're able to take away, kind of the story and the victim mindset, to live our lives from the vantage point of the growth mindset and the ability to understand as each opportunity as a capacity to evolve our own inner being, So I always try to do that in my own unique way, but it's hard because at the end of the day, no one's immune from being human. And I know a lot of great spiritual teachers, they'll say, oh, I talk in front of all these crowds, but my family, they'll say, oh, what about that in your book? What about that in your talk? Like, how come you're not? So at the end of the day, we're not perfect. We have the human part, which you could look at either way, but to me, that keeps things exciting, that there's always something to enhance or to improve or to evolve. And, that keeps me up at night, which is how could I, continually deepen, evolution every day. So.
How can you continually deepen evolution?
Deepen, growth and evolution and expand, my own inner being.
Okay.
And so I try to take the growth mindset and the opportunity mindset, within these times. And I think, near-death experiencers, you could look at your experience from a closed-ended perspective where you saw that all that ever is and ever was, or you could say it as an open-ended experience where you had such a degree of expansionness where it almost kind of has you at this infinite quest to taste that more, to experience that more. And I think you could do that here on Earth in your own unique ways, to really see past a lot of the surface value and to see the beauty in a lot more that meets the eye. And I think if you're able to do that, it's a lot more of an easier transition when it's all in front of you from having it truly inside of you. Your inner being matches the vibrational frequency of the other side.
Now you do past life regressions?
Yes, I do. I'm a trained, certified hypnotherapist. So I do cigarette cessation, weight loss, confidence building. It's just, it's a lot of clinical hypnosis that I work with, but I also do past life regression. And to me, that's fascinating because as a kid having this near-death experience, I was quite traumatized, by that life in which I took my own life. And in different moments, I would have spontaneous past life recollection. And so for me, it was just very traumatic having all these images. And I don't know about you, Peggy, but for me, I view all these transformative experiences as a motivating factor to give back what I was given. In moments of deprivation of life force, we were shown eternal life. And that keeps me up in a way, when people in their own literal or metaphorical way, when they're out of, depleted from life forces, to give them the gift that we were given. And so I love past life regression because it's a very empowering tool to allow people to understand who they've been, to understand where they're going. And it's a little bit more of an awareness of your own inner being beyond this lifetime.
What do they do? Get like into relaxation and then it comes? How's that work?
Oh, yeah, sure. Past life regression is a form of hypnosis. So we get them in something called, we go through the hypnotic induction, which, gets them in a very relaxed state. And then it's all about the power of suggestibility, the subconscious mind, which is the conscious mind is, the reality that we're aware of, and the subconscious is kind of like the computer database that governs our life. And, so it's a lot of things that we might not be aware of on this kind of grid. It's kind of almost kind of like the internet, where it's just like this endless space of data. And so I work with my clients and really accessing the subconscious mind to follow suggestibility, to allow them to go into different carnations. And I work on a group basis and individual basis, and I've seen profound transformation, from being able to access past lives. What's interesting about past lives is if we do believe that we have previous lifetimes, we do carry a lot of that on a subconscious level. So anywhere from health to family relationships, to psychological, worldviews, some of those things are unexplained tendencies that we have. And so from going to the point of entry beyond this lifetime, we're able to move the needle a little bit more that might be stuck, subconsciously in another lifetime that we're recreating within this lifetime here on Earth. So a lot of it is cellular memory and stuff like that. So it allows us more to be more so present in this lifetime versus regurgitating things that we, recreate or re-experience from previous carnations. I think we're trying to burn a lot of that off.
Do you think we are one person at a time, or do you think, like, say when I pass on, that I could like go in like my granddaughter's body and then like be her guardian angel? Is that like a reincarnation? Like maybe you could go in and out as you choose, or is it just like one person stuck? You know what I mean? What's your thoughts?
We always have the power to choose, and it's something certainly within our own left brain, that's very hard to process. But I do believe that we're in this, we're not what we think. I'll leave it there. I could say to you, Peggy, you're in this chair right now, but not really, because you're in this chair, which happens to be in the room, which happens to be in Ohio, which happens to be on a planet rotating around the sun, which happens to be even a smaller part of what that is. So on a physical basis, we're just so limited with how we see ourselves. And I think if that's the case, I think on an inner being basis, that's true. Our awareness of the nature of reality and in ourselves is very limited. So it's not just like what's in front of us and what we know in the moment. It's eternally forever more expansive than we could ever imagine. So I think there's an earthbound version of ourselves, but there's also, other higher forms of ourselves connected to different existences and realities at hand. But again, it's so mind-blowing that I don't think it's necessarily healthy to think about that, because it's like, it almost feels like your head's about to explode when you think about to that
It's just
degree.
like my grandkids. Like there's one granddaughter, I can see my ex-husband's mother in her so
Mm,
clearly. And then another granddaughter, I can see my mom's mom, my grandma, in her,
right,
just in
right.
her eyes, like she's there. And then also too, I can see myself in her. And another granddaughter, I can see myself in her. Another one, I can see my brother in him.
Mm,
And it's just like there's just these moments I just pause. I'm like, I see them. And that
right.
person could be still be living, just like I'm still living. But it's like you say, a cell level, I don't know. But it's just like
Yeah,
there's certain moments this all of a sudden hits me, and it's this like ancient connection.
right. It's funny that you say that, because I mentioned this in Life After Breath. My biggest spiritual mentor, who got me, back, on this path and very empowered, um, she was having deathbed visions. And, for people unfamiliar, that's, common in people in hospice, where brain activity is a lot lower, but their awareness all of a sudden, explodes. And so family members get excited that they're having awareness and, recollection, and they might be speaking different dialogues or having communication with loved ones on the other side, or talking about the hand reaching them from the light. But her last message to me was, the word picture. And she said, if you look at a family photograph, there might be, on a very surface level, distinct physical characteristics. But if you look, beyond the physical characteristics, at the eyes of the soul, there's a uniformal energy connecting each person, usually within that picture, that goes far beyond our own awareness. And so at the time I thought, it's a very profound message, and I thought nothing of it. A year or two later, I was getting, an evidential medium reading, with the medium. She goes, I'm hearing your aunt's name. Why does she keep on telling me the word picture, picture, picture? What's that about? And I know that was her way of really validating the soul family member and the eternal connectivity that we have, that's ancient, that goes far beyond this lifetime. That's an undeniable connection, that's just profound and very divine. And I could attest to that, where there's a degree of this profound connection that, goes beyond our ability to even express, you know.
And even if, you have these moments where you just look yourself in the mirror, like
Mm,
you are like face to face with yourself, like really, I mean, those moments, right?
mm,
Really, and even with yourself like that, you feel this, it's not ancient, but such a deeper, it's kind of
uh,
weird. Like we were talking about here one other time, and it's, I don't know. And
yeah, yeah, it
like we
could
go
get
to the grocery
trippy.
store, we avoid eye contact. Like all times, I'll just go in, I just avoid eye contact. But then there's days where I'm just like making eye
Mm,
contact and making connections, and it's just, I don't know what, there must be a word for that, but
mm.
um,
Eyes
it's
are the
strange.
window of the soul, as they
Yeah.
say, and I think that's that's very true. Within, it's a practice called Chinese face reading. They're able to look at, the degrees of depth within one's eyes. And usually if the depths bounce back at them, it's usually a less evolved soul. But if they're able to look in the eyes and see, almost as if there's a depth to that. It's not like the eyes are deep set or anything like that, but there's like a depth, there's an energy, and you could tell there's like a personality beyond those eyes. It's usually a more evolved being. And I firmly believe, I firmly could agree to that. Where if you look at Yogananda or the Dalai Lama, stuff like that, you just look at their eyes, you could tell there's such a depth to it, and it's a very deep reservoir where it doesn't look and bounce back at you. You could tell that there's something there. It just takes you on this kind of like infinite journey. So, yeah. Yeah.
So where are you at now? Like what discoveries or what's really are you into right now as far as, I mean, any I mean, you're young. I mean, how old are you? I forget how old you're, like you're
the
31.
the big 3-1, 1990 baby, year of the
Yeah.
horse.
See, I can't imagine being so insightful at 31. Like 31, I was just, well, it was 10 years after high school before I went to college. Like I had kids, it's busy, I was doing all this stuff. And you're sitting here like
No,
contemplating
no,
the cosmos or whatever.
no. What's interesting is that when you think of the greatest of anything, I'm an athlete, but when you say the greatest of anything, you say that Michael Jordan. The Michael Jordan of that means you're at the top of your top. But yes, Michael Jordan once got cut, as we know, from his high school basketball team, and he went to his bed, and I think, I believe Wilmington, North Carolina, and just sobbed hysterically in his bed. And there was like this intuitive hit that came to him, I guess, or this understanding that he got cut from his team because he was comparing his skill set with what was around him. So if he was doing that, he could only be kind of even with what's around him. Versus he knew that if he was able to tap into his own inner power, then he was unstoppable. And I think that's the same with us. I think part of us gets a little bit slowed down because we get defined by our age group or what's around us. We don't tap into our own inner power enough, and we're not connected from the inside out. We live our life from the outside in. And so I've always tried to live that way, where you don't compare, you don't define yourself by the ego or the age or the personality. There's an eternal being down there that we're here to remember, re-experience. And some people might take that the right way, but at the end of the day, that's why we came here, to be true to who we are, not what's around us, not what we've been taught to who we've been, but really authentically connected to that inner being, So that's what I try to live by, and beating by our own drum. And I know you do that to a great degree. And there's no greater liberty of being a full expressive, expansive version of that inner being there.
I think when you've been on the other side, even as a child, there is this memory of, like I try to describe while it goes, like of being whole. Like during a drowning, it's like I can remember every single thought I had. Every single thought. I thought this word for word for word. I can't tell you what I was thinking, an hour ago, let alone word for word. And then the same way at 25, that NDE, every single thought is just, and it seemed like everything is just so
clear and
crisp,
profound.
Yeah.
Well, I think I look at it two ways. For instance, if I were to ask you, what were you doing on 9/15/2001? Would you be able to tell me? But if I ask you, what were you doing on 9/11, you'd probably be able to most likely tell me.
Yeah.
And I think trauma allows us, to hold on to memories. And I think near-death experiences, people focus on the euphoric elements of them, and that is a part of it. But before that, it's very traumatic what we go through, just in terms of suffocation, the body shutting down. But also this experience is far beyond the brain. The brain and mind are not the same. They're two totally different entities. And so I think, having this experience as like just way beyond our own physical body, I think allows us, to hold on to it. But, that's the most, controversial element of my near-death experience, which I entertain. I think that's great. If you're not creating controversy, you're not creating change. When have anyone's ever created controversy and not be a part of change? And so people look at my experience and they say, oh, this guy's lying. How did he have this experience at 3 and remember it? Well, how do people have, past life recollections in the 1500s and remember that too? We're not linear beings, we're infinite beings, so we're not timed by limitations of recollections in the subconscious mind. Well, also, yes, it is possible with this profound, traumatic experience that goes far beyond the brain to have, profound recollection far beyond, our own ability to remember what we did yesterday. This isn't the linear trajectory of the brain that we have in its relationship to memory.
I call them
Totally
soul
different.
memories because it seems to me, and my understanding, is like the NDEs, spiritual experience, out of body experience, that those happened outside of our brain. So it happened in our soul, and
Right,
our
exactly.
soul on the other side is perfect. So we're not going to forget. It's going to stay crisp. Where if the memory is in our brain,
Mm,
we're not going to have the memories much. But I think that traumatic memories, like I had PTSD,
mm,
and so I had all these spiritual memories I couldn't forget, and I had all these trauma
mm,
memories I couldn't forget. And so I pushed them all under the rug the same.
mm, mm,
But the difference in the PTSD memories, the trauma, and the spiritual is, yes, they're both very clear, and yes, they're both reoccurring, but the PTSD I couldn't control, and I
mm,
didn't want them. They
mm.
were intrusive, and they kept
Right,
me
right.
upset, and they made me
Sure.
feel bad, and I was stuck in them. Where the spiritual, I control them. They just don't come out of nowhere and bother me. Let me tell you about my NDE, and I'm all excited and I'm happy and I'm full of energy all day. It doesn't be like, oh no, that near death experience, here it comes again. It's not like that. Like
Mm,
the trauma is
mm.
like, oh no, something triggered me. Like, it used to
Right.
be my husband's mom, she would say, how's your mother? That right there, trigger. Here we go, PTSD.
Mm.
All you
Yeah,
gotta do
yeah,
is say, how's your mother? Oh God.
yeah, yeah. And I think really what I found from the near death experience is that in order to find yourself, you have to be willing to lose yourself. And sometimes we get very comfortable in the body, and sometimes we need this bit of the shakeup in the body to really find that we're not this body, that we are this beautiful eternal being in this meat suit, and we're not our bodies. And I think we lose that part of awareness, but we find a whole new, evolved awareness from that understanding. So I think that that's great. But yeah, it's a lot of people ask what's the difference between psychic and and psychotic. And I think if it's like intrusive or dark and all that kind of stuff, that might be more psychotic episodes versus psychic. It's usually very loving, very warm. It could be intrusive, but it's like a healing, degree. But I look at it as if, to me, I view the other side as if like the soft air coming from this door that opens up that you feel, then it's just this gentle breeze that you feel that you just know is, otherworldly. And it's a very comforting feeling.
With your mental health background, what do you think about this? Like, um, just left my mind. Maybe when that happens.
Schizophrenia and multiple
No,
personality disorder and all. Yeah.
it was here and it's gone now. I
You'll
had a
have,
really good question to ask
you,
you.
you'll have to message me, or we'll have to retape a whole new episode to have that question.
Shoot,
It's
it'll
it's
come. It'll come. I'm in a senior moment.
I have full faith. Oh, please. Yeah. But yeah, for me and my work, my goal is I just love finding ways, and I know you're the same, of experiencing who I am, which is infinite creative, force. And so with these experiences, I like to have a life behind them. I like to put the tire on the road and figuring out, okay, how could I reach that person in my own unique way who's going through a difficult time? And in our minds, we plant a seed, but behind that seed is a California red road tree in that seed, and it's just infinite possibilities from just putting yourself out there. And I'm sure you're experiencing this now, even more so with your creative outlets, with the ripple effect of just showing up and having good intentions and seeing the lives that it impacts. And that's we need that more than ever in these times. You know, it really that's integral to the thrival of our and survival of the world today.
I remember my question.
No.
Okay, I remember my question. Okay,
Mm.
so during child abuse, trauma, rape,
Mm.
often people will leave their body.
Right,
Like I left,
disassociating.
like I did, I left my body. Okay, I thought that's a spiritual experience because I was praying I wasn't even here on this earth, and suddenly I was looking down to earth, and my hair was blown. I had my clothes on, and I could see earth, and I was in the nights. I was there. It was not a fantasy or illusion. I was there.
Mhm.
Okay. But then later somebody I was telling that I thought that's a spiritual experience. Like I felt rescued. I was saved. And a nurse said that's common with abuse that you leave. But I'm like, but they're real though. Like I watch like true story, like Lifetime and stuff, movies. And a lot of times I'll notice like the lady is told, do not upset him. Do not, because he will, because because he has before. Something she could not have known and something that saved her life. Those things come and they show it like it's a little out of body, but it's almost like a near-death experience.
Sure.
Because it's a rescue and you're in that realm, and it's not a psychotic, it's not a fantasy. It is actual, as real as an NDE.
Right.
But it's like a spiritual death, temporary death instead of a physical.
Right.
And so I don't know what that's called.
Well, I mean, they call it dissociative or stuff, but I think, trauma does relate to the brain. The brain, really shuts down, with abuse, with trauma. But I think it puts the brain and the mind in two separate categories, where if consciousness is produced by the brain, then how is it possible for people to, have all these experiences where they leave their body and they can know things that they would have no priviness of knowing? And it just kind of shows you that we're not, created by our brains, and we have this whole other part of us called the mind. And the brain does not create the mind, but the two are very separate. The mind exists not because of the brain, but despite of it. And so to have such a traumatic experience, I would say, like, you should have, like, should be very shut down, nothingness, not like expanding and leaving your body, but it's almost kind of like the spirit's way of protecting itself against something so damaging and so detrimental to its nature that it needs to rise above it and it needs to protect itself. So, it's just funny how, science is put into corners with so many things, with their nature of consciousness, and they have no answers for the brain mind distinguish. How is it possible for people, like we said, deathbed visions, to have lower brain activity but higher awareness? If the brain does create a reality and your brain is decreasing, how is it possible for you to be so much more aware?
And the
Why
ones that's
is
had
it?
Alzheimer's,
It does not add up. Yeah.
for so many years, don't even know who they are, don't know who their kids are. And then right before they die,
Right.
suddenly
They have that, I forget the terminology, but
they're lucid.
yeah, lucid visions. But yeah, and like I said, the family gets excited, but it just shows you that, the brain is just a filter of this world. It's not the creator.
And like when we have like a psychic vision or something, or like when I was in deep prayer praying, I hope I was praying that my son, was going to be okay when he was drowning in the creek. And then all of a sudden I was like out in that realm, just like I was at the drowning, I was in that realm. And suddenly I knew, I was like in that, I call it the land of knowing. And I knew, oh, even though I couldn't see him, I knew what happened. He knew he had fell in the creek. And so I started praying to him instead of God. Then I said, Jeremy, stand up. It's not that deep. Walk out of there. And then years later, he said, Mom, I heard you praying. And that's what it was. I fell in and I was trying to swim and I heard you praying, stand, walk, and then I stood up. And so I'm like, okay, what is this? Because I wasn't dead. Was he near death? Was he actual, dying? but how did he hear me, And so
Telepathically, yeah.
I want answers. And, nobody has them to satisfy me.
All right. Yeah, and it just shows you how truly connected we are. And sometimes we forget, especially particularly family, and how thoughts have a vibrational frequency. And, if we're truly just energy, and thoughts are just energy waves, and this is really, becoming a lot more scientifically proven, that, just in terms of our thoughts and our energy and its ability to manipulate reality and to send, different, changes to reality, and to be evidentially known. So, it's transmitters of frequency that we are all are.
I just
So,
don't know why it's not taken seriously and studied,
right.
and, to have like degree programs where you could actually do research,
Like in
because
Paris, well, I think parapsychology, it really does focus a lot on this kind of stuff within the
but the
paranormal.
programs I've looked at, they just
Yeah,
weren't cutting it.
yeah, yeah. Well, you might have an idea on your hand, Peggy. We got to get Peggy University, right? So
I think so. But
PR.
where do you get the books? I mean, they're not written.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
no, I mean, I don't mean to promote a book, but I have this book called The Afterlife Frequency by my good friend Mark Anthony, who endorsed my book, and it's very much scientific, and
See
he
the
gets into a
psychic
lot of,
lawyer?
yes, and he
Okay.
talks about quantum physics, and Mark is, I mean, he's brilliant. I do recommend, if anyone's interested in all the quantum physics and the breakdown of this stuff, like this book is really really good.
He
So
spoke
I'd
right
recommend.
before we did at that
Yeah, no,
conference.
Mark's right, and he's a friend of mine. I would say this if he was a friend or not, but his new book is really, groundbreaking, and talking about these same kind of stuff, and talking about, energy and frequency, and, you know, um, quantum physics and all that kind of stuff. I'm not like a scientific, like, I'm trying to educate myself a bit more, but I think it's important because that will really ground this stuff and allow this stuff to be understood on a left brain level.
What's it
You
called
know,
again?
the afterlife frequency. I actually have it right here.
You
Mark,
think that answers some of my questions?
I think it's going to help. And Mark's
Okay.
Mark's books are great. I do read Mark's books. I've read his other two, and he's phenomenal. So I do recommend checking out his work, um, as well as Dr. Brian Weiss's work. If you're familiar with Brian Weiss, he does a lot of different studies of paranormal activity and having science explain it. People know him as a past life guy, but Brian does a lot of science and experiments, and he's a Yale trained psychiatrist, but he really focuses on providing, like, almost kind of evidential proof towards higher consciousness through different experiments. So do check out Dr. Brian Weiss's work, some of his newer work too. But
It's hard to find books like that, like to know
yeah,
what's out there.
yeah, Mark's book is, I love the direction that he goes, and he also talks about the science behind spirit communication, psychic phenomenon, how it's not woo woo, but actually able to be explained within energy. Albert Einstein, would say that we are just energy that can never be destroyed, and we're all just energy, vibrating differently in our own unique ways, and we're more dense being physical, but it's kind of like a fan. The fan goes so fast so you can't see the individual blades, but the individual blades are there. And so I think when we leave the body, it's still there, but we can't see it because it's vibrating at such a high rate. So, just because we can't physically see it doesn't mean that it's not there in its own unique way. It's just a lot less dense. So, you know, but yeah, do check
Interesting.
out, and as well as Life After Breath is there too.
So
that's
yeah,
that's
talk
a
about
little,
your book.
you know,
Talk about it.
what I saw was, throughout years of talking about near-death experiences, was people would, hear a near-death experience encounter, get quite inspired, and obviously the anecdotal evidence of it would cause people to really think differently, but they would also feel a little bit isolated, that they didn't have these experiences, that it was almost kind of like a jealousy thing, or they wanted these experiences. So Life After Breath really if I leave this world known as the afterlife guy, I'll be quite disappointed. My goal is to put the afterlife in people's hands and to allow people to remember who they truly are. So life after breath, yes, is about my near-death experience, but it's also, about the vulnerability, and it's very grounded in my own experience. And I think I did that not for to have a vendetta or to go at certain people, but rather to empower people to see, hey, Jacob Cooper, this guy I could relate to, and he's no different than I am, and I too could be empowered in my own infinite nature, and I don't have to go up to the Himalayan mountains to be enlightened. I could have it right here wherever I am. And so my goal was really, to empower people and to allow people to remember their true nature. And I think all spiritual teachers to some degree have done that, whether that's, Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, whoever they are. Their goal wasn't for you to put them on a pedestal, but rather to see your own reflection in their own light. And life after breath is, my goal is really to inspire people to look at life in a different way and to give back, life that I was given in moments of suffocation back to people in their own struggles. And I think we need that now more than ever. So,
Yeah.
right now I'm about to finish up my second book, which is titled The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. But the interesting allegory of my near-death experience is that it occurred in a playground. And I think everything has, a reason for it, but it's that saying we're all just children playing here in God's playground.
I love
all
that
our brothers
title.
we're all our brothers and sisters keeper. And the fact that my name is Jacob, my experience happened to happen on a ladder on a slide. It's just like, you just can't make this up. And
Right.
it was just so many allegories and symbology with my experience. But I do believe we're all here just playing, in God's playgrounds, our brothers and sisters keeper, here in this life. But my next book really is titled The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I mean, that might change depending on my publisher, but that's really, nuggets of wisdom from the hereafter to the here now. And so how you don't have to wait till you die to get to heaven, or how you don't have to have a near-death experience to have this. You could have the hereafter in your everyday life. So that's some of the, wisdom parlayed from a near-death experience to give over to other people.
Yeah. I just try to keep one foot over there on the other side.
Yeah, no, it's got to be like on both sides now, as Joni Mitchell would say, right? In her song, Both Sides Now. But that's about, I think, like a breakup or something like that, but something else. But yeah.
So even though you're 31, you're always coming up with these old songs or old movies, and it's so funny.
I listen to the Carpenters, Joni Mitchell, obviously Fleetwood Mac, and I'm eclectic in my taste, so yeah. No.
Yeah, you're just like more of my age group when it comes to entertainment.
Right. A 90s kid with the 60s soul, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, tune in and drop out, all that stuff. Yeah. But yeah. But anyway, no, it's been a true honor, true pleasure, being on NDE TV, and really encourage people who are listening to subscribe, continue to watch a lot of different, anecdotal near-death experiences. And, if you have an experience or know someone, please do go on, make the referral, and let's continue to make, community. And as long as we're doing that, we don't have to wait till we die, to go to heaven. We have it in front of us from different examples of clear knowing of this true reality that is, right in our own backyard,
Yeah.
So.
I love the variety. I mean, I never know who's going to be on, just who's going to show up and say, I want on, or I'll decide, I'm going to go with this person on, or.
What I love about it is just so accepting. And it's like, whoever wants to come on, comes on. It's not like, you have to have a social media prerequisite or whatever, it's
or a degree.
Or a degree or whatever,
or have a best-selling book, or be well known, or because
you don't have to be like Jake. I'm messing. No. I am none of those things, maybe the degrees, but you have a degree. What does that mean?
That's your humor. That's how we joke.
A degree, just a master's degree, just means that you're a beginner. It means that you have an ability to start practicing. It doesn't mean that you're a master. So it's just, we're all the same, like we said, but no, just keep at the great work. doing what you're doing, and we love what you do, and it's just great to see the genesis of this and to see how it evolves, the different carnations of our careers, and knowing that we, stood there, at ground, at the genesis, and to see how it evolved and expanded, and, obviously the hills and valleys and all that stuff, but all just at the end of the day goes to an upward trajectory, so that's great.
Well, you get some sleep. I know you got work tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, Peggy. Keep at it, PR. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye now.